Welcome, seekers of shadows, to Dark Chronicles. Tonight, we begin our journey into one of the most iconic and chilling symbols of medieval horror, the Iron Maiden. Picture it, a towering coffin of cold steel, studded with spikes, waiting to embrace its victim in a slow, crushing death. For centuries, this grim contraption has haunted our imagination. Featured in horror films, twisted artwork, even tourist museums. But here is the question that we must ask ourselves. Was the Iron Maiden truly real, or was it a carefully crafted myth, born from propaganda, fear, and the dark fascination of later centuries? In this episode, we will not only uncover the legend, but also dissect the truth. We'll explore where the stories began, why the image of the Iron Maiden persisted, and how modern historians have revealed surprising evidence that may shatter everything you thought you knew. So, light your candle, draw the curtains, and let us open the coffin of history itself. The first step is to ask, when did people start talking about the Iron Maiden? Most assume it was a standard tool of the Middle Ages. After all, the Middle Ages are often painted as an age of cruelty, dungeons, torture chambers, and endless brutality. So the Iron Maiden fits perfectly into this picture. But the shocking truth? The earliest confirmed mention of an Iron Maiden doesn't come from the so-called Dark Ages at all. It appears much later, in the 18th century. One of the most famous cases is connected to the city of Nuremberg in Germany. In 1515, there was indeed a reference to a spiked coffin. But historians argue this description was vague, more metaphorical than literal. It wasn't until centuries later that writers and collectors began to assemble parts of older torture devices, spiked doors, iron masks, sarcophagi, into what we now call the Iron Maiden. Think about that. For hundreds of years, no medieval records describe a fully formed Iron Maiden being used in punishment or execution. The medieval world was brutal, yes, but chroniclers recorded floggings, burnings, executions by wheel, hanging, quartering, all in disturbing detail. If an Iron Maiden had been widely used, wouldn't we have dozens of descriptions? Instead, silence. This silence speaks volumes.
If the Iron Maiden wasn't a real medieval device, why do we believe in it so strongly? The answer lies in propaganda. During the 18th and 19th centuries, Europe was changing. Old empires crumbled, revolutions burned, and with them came a hunger for stories that painted the medieval church and monarchy as barbaric monsters of the past. The Iron Maiden became a perfect weapon in this cultural war. Imagine you're a writer in the Enlightenment. You want to convince your readers that the medieval world was ignorant, savage, and cruel compared to the rational age of modernity. What better image to use than a coffin of spikes designed to torture someone slowly to death? It shocks, it horrifies, and it justifies the idea that humanity is progressing away from darkness. Tourist attractions played a role too. In the 19th century, as museums began collecting relics of the past, curators wanted objects that would fascinate and terrify the public. So they reconstructed Iron Maidens from random medieval artifacts. They weren't authentic torture devices, but rather Frankenstein creations, stitched together to tell a sensational story. It worked. Crowds gasped, writers spread the tales. Soon, the Iron Maiden became a household name. Now, let's fast forward to modern scholarship. Over the last century, historians began digging into the archives, questioning the validity of the Iron Maiden. Their findings? Eye-opening. First, they noted that every Iron Maiden displayed in museums was constructed in the modern era, often the 18th or 19th century. None could be traced to actual medieval torture chambers. Second, they examined medieval law codes, court records, and chronicles. Torture was indeed used, but it was pragmatic. Authorities wanted confessions quickly. Methods like the rack, strappado, or burning with irons were effective and horrifying enough. The Iron Maiden, however, would have been slow, theatrical, and ultimately inefficient. It didn't match the practical, cruel logic of medieval torture. Third, historians looked at cultural psychology. The Iron Maiden symbolized something deeper, the myth of medieval cruelty. It wasn't just about torture, it was about defining an entire era as darker than the Enlightenment or the Renaissance. In other words, the Iron Maiden wasn't a medieval reality. It was a mirror reflecting later centuries' fears and biases. Here is the haunting truth. Even though historians have debunked it, the Iron Maiden lives on in popular imagination. Why? Because it is too powerful a symbol to die. It appears in horror movies, heavy metal album covers, video games, and dark fantasy novels. It has become an icon of fear, almost like Dracula or Frankenstein, not historically accurate, but too compelling to ignore. And psychologically, we humans are drawn to the macabre. We want to believe that the past was darker than the present. We want to believe that humanity has evolved. The Iron Maiden satisfies this craving. It is the perfect horror story, neatly packaged, that allows us to say, look how far we've come. But perhaps we should be careful. When myths like the Iron Maiden are accepted as truth, they distort our understanding of history. They make us blind to the real horrors that did exist: burnings, wars, inquisitions, slavery. The Iron Maiden may be a fiction, but the reality of human cruelty is far darker.
So, what do we see when we open the coffin of history? Not rows of spikes dripping with blood, but something perhaps even more disturbing: the human imagination itself. The Iron Maiden was never about a medieval torture chamber. It was about us, our need for monsters, our hunger for horror, our willingness to believe terrifying myths if they fit the story we want to tell. And that is why the Iron Maiden endures, not as a weapon of the past, but as a mirror to our present. When you next see its image, whether in a film, a museum, or a chilling illustration, remember this: sometimes the darkest prisons are not made of iron, but of the stories we choose to believe. Thank you for journeying with me into the shadows of history. Tonight we learned that the Iron Maiden is less a medieval reality and more a modern myth, a reminder that even history itself can be forged like iron. If you found this exploration chilling, thought-provoking, or eye-opening, then I invite you to support Dark Chronicles. Subscribe for more tales of torture, betrayal, and the forbidden secrets of the past. Like this video to help others find it. Share it with those who think they know the truth about medieval torture. The past is never truly dead. Its shadows still walk among us. And here on Dark Chronicles, we will continue to bring them to life. Until next time, keep your lantern burning.